All right, welcome back to the show. That's George, also known as Rupert. I'm Isaiah, also known as Pinchy. What we want to do here is we want to jump off the scroll cage of doom and instead focus on what is important and aim to the truth. And so, with that out of the way, I think we just begin. How's it going?
Good. How you doing, Pinchy?
Good.
Good.
I slept pretty well last night. How about you?
Good. It's nice being off the squirrel cage. But
Yeah, it
now
was
that we're
getting
off the squirrel
exhausting.
cage, well, the only thing is there are hunters now that are shooting at me, but that's okay. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, things are good. Got my free Quick Trip coffee, who's uh uh mystery sponsoring us. They don't know it, so it's a mystery to
Instead
them.
of the
But
evil instant coffee.
oh yeah, no more of the evil instant coffee, even in emergency settings. I don't think
Oh, well,
so.
I mean, you could maybe use it to, like, um,
Kill friends.
yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Poison. You can use it as poison.
yeah, poison rodents that are around the house. Yeah, okay. So no,
Okay.
but
Yeah. Yeah. So what are we talking about today?
so I don't know. Watching something on YouTube or reading an article or just in my reading, I was just thinking about um, the discussion about young Earth and old Earth, and it just made me start thinking about all different kind of things, and so I was thinking to myself, I must have been watching, or maybe I saw either a clip or just the thumbnail of a debate. Uh, Old Earthers versus young Earthers, and I also saw a debate. It was like they were debating about the best Bible translation. It was like an hour and 50 minutes long. I'm like, really? An hour and 50 minutes long?
Wow.
And one of the parties was adamant that there is only one. There's only one.
Only one good translation, or
Only one true translations. All the rest. Anyway,
was he?
uh,
Is he on the King James party?
I wasn't going to go there, but as long as you trying to throw the British under the bus once again, so. But anyway, so I was just thinking about young Earth and old Earth, and I was thinking to myself, do I even really care? You know,
I'll just
does
tell
it?
you, I've spent so much time in listening to those debates, and it's like hearing you talk about it again. I'm like, man, I wasted so much time on this topic.
So what you're saying is you're really glad I was really insightful to bring up this really interesting topic for you. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
yeah. I was really excited when I heard it. I was like,
Is like
I've never heard this conversation before.
this is new.
Yeah, it's
Everything we're
not old.
talking about, actually, what Z and I are going to talk about. He's also known as Z. He's also known as Isaiah the Zealot. But
Yeah, sure.
yeah, what we're gonna say today
You're
we've
called
never
George
said
the
before.
Farmer, or Farmer the Farmer. That's what they
Farmer,
call you.
farmer. Yeah, redundant. Um, so Peter, repeat. No, but what we're gonna share today, we've never shared before.
It comes from the heart.
It comes from the heart. Okay, so no, but okay, so I'm glad that you have some background on this. So what's your
Well, I forgot all about it, so I'm not going to be
well, I'm
much
going to
help.
probe your memory like a fork in the eye. You have to go through the outside to get into the memory. So,
That's very insightful.
so what did you think? What was going on?
Well, in school, homeschool, there was a entire like couple chapters on old Earth, new Earth theories or uniformitarianism. I forget what the other, catastrophism, and I'm like, and honestly, like I said, this debate has bored me. But I used to watch debates. It was mostly with atheists versus Christians when it came to the debate of um, old Earth versus new Earth. But I
Hmm.
feel like since then it's been a lot more popular to have a creationist still believe in a young Earth, and another one to believe in an old Earth. That seems to be how it's evolved over time, and I think it's a mistake.
Wait a minute. Did you say evolved? Okay, keep going. So you believe in evolution?
Evolution?
Evolvity?
What? Um, but it's the conversation has just kind of evolved into creationists discussing this, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that with what I've seen, there's more evidence for the young Earth, but I have to ask the question: why does it matter?
When you say evidence, what type of evidence you talk about? Scientific evidence, you mean?
Yeah, geological evidence, the way that dating works, that's absolutely flawed. Some of the evidence,
When you say dating, you mean like dating
carbon
relationships?
dating or
Oh, carbon
radioactive
dating.
dating. I forgot what that one is called. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a video that just showed the inaccuracies of like an animal that died like the same day was tested and it was like 2,000 years old, according to their tests. And I'm like, this doesn't give me much hope for the other tests that they have. And so, honestly, I've never liked the evolutionist side. I've always thought, whenever I hear, oh, this is a million years old fossil, a trillion, billion, whatever quadrillion they say. And then I'm like, I always cringe whenever I hear that. And I'm always like, it's not. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
You're liars. And it's like, I really think they're liars about it. But I think I need to be more charitable when I'm considering that there are some creationists that believe in that, and to be able to be like, well, I don't like it, but maybe I have to say something about it more than I do. I don't know. That's some of the initial thoughts that I have, but I don't know
Well,
what you're thinking.
well, I was,
If I did, I wouldn't be me. I would be you.
yeah. Well, I was thinking that if I were to be like, for example, a doctor in chemistry, am I a doctor in chemistry?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
you are.
Yes, I am. I'm a speculative doctor with a speculative degree. So I was just thinking how fun it would be to write a book as a doctor and professor, which we've discovered in this show that I actually am. Um, but have it be on chemistry and have it called "How Carbon Can um, Succeed in Dating," you know, uh, or something
Carbon
like that. I
dating,
think
yeah,
carbon dating.
yeah, carbon
Uh,
dating. How to succeed?
Now you said that it seems like the that other side is liars, and like you said, you want to be more charitable. Obviously, they're thinking that they're assuming that it has to be, and so maybe they're just completely blind to their bias and maybe unwilling to look at the other parameters. But when you talked about the fact that it kind of has evolved, not from a species evolving, but evolved the
Ideologically,
debate. Yeah, the debate of creationists being young Earth or old Earth. I almost think that's a good step for us as Christians in a sense, because it'll bring us to the heart of what I was thinking about this show. It's uh, like when I first mentioned. I mean, you said it just bores you, and I'm like, I'm not sure it matters, but there's a great lesson before we get to that point. It says like, okay, that doesn't matter. That's not primary. So, um, so I was thinking that okay, so we have we believe in God. We believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. We have not only sound intellectual, philosophical reasons why.
right?
We have not only emotional, psychological, what would you say, human thriving, happiness reasons why, but also we have faith. that, you know, it's not simply that we saw with our mind that there must be a God, and but it's a little bit more deeper to where we would hope that we would be willing to suffer with Christ if that's what it meant
Right.
to maintain, you know, allegiance and fidelity with our God.
Right.
So it means something very, very deep. So all those three things, intellectually, psychologically, emotionally, and then on top of that, from the light of faith. So, you know, if Jesus says, for example, to Peter, or first Peter goes, "Hey, Master." Uh, Actually, Peter doesn't say it first. Peter comes in, and before Peter can say anything, Jesus goes, "So, Peter, what do you think? You know, should the king's children pay taxes, or should others?" And Peter answered. He realized he got caught with what he just said. That, you know, to the guy that says, "Do you and your master pay taxes?" And he said, "Oh, others." So then Jesus said, "Well, then the children are free. But so that we don't cause offense, go down the lake, cast in a line, and the first fish you pick up, reach in its mouth and grab the coin out of there and go pay the tax for you and me." Now, if Peter said, if he walked out there and he said, "Okay, let's have a debate whether or not we should seek money in the mouths of fish," and he had pros and cons debating that, who would be on the pros on that, by the way? Hey, Steve thinks that we can go to the lake and fish and get cash out of the mouth of a fish. Oh, that's interesting. Dave thinks that that's nonsense. And so then they have a debate. And so my reason for bringing that all up, which I hope you know why, because I have no clue. No, but the reason for bringing it up is if the Lord says it and we trust the Lord, even if with our eyes we're like, okay, something's inconsistent here.
Mm.
Doesn't make sense. What do you mean go to the lake and get money from fish mouths? Uh, um, well, he said to do it, or he said so you do it. Okay. And to me, it's a little bit like that. It's like, and there would be so on young Earth, for example, if it's a young Earth, and they have reasons to believe that it is scientifically and scripturally, we have to ask ourselves: did Jesus ever have a dissertation on? Is that in chapter 4 of Mark, where he gave the sermon on the young Earth and the old Earth?
No, I don't. What Bible are
Do
you
you
reading
recall
from?
that? Yeah. Well, so from the Creationist Handbook in debates with atheists, I don't know if you've read that, but anyway, that's where they're quoting that from some version. But my point being, there are indications in Scripture that it would seem like it would be a young Earth from scriptural reference. We're just talking scripturally
Right.
now, and then you know more about the scientific reasons.
Well, I also know that one. I did some research on that.
Okay, so there's reasons why, from a scriptural standpoint, people would feel like it's consistent to have a young Earth.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's great. Jesus didn't have a specific teaching on it.
No, no.
His teaching was on follow me,
Yeah.
and so you can go like, well, it seems like there's a young Earth, but then I hear all these arguments for an old Earth.
Right.
I can go like, oh no, oh no. It's like, wait a minute, back up. If it is a young Earth, And just because the scientists or some Christians believe that there's scientific reason for an old Earth, maybe they're not seeing the whole picture. Just like Christianity in Galileo's time or Copernicus' time, when they felt like the world was helio or geocentric, or the universe was geocentric, with the Earth in the middle and everything else revolving around it. And Copernicus comes along and says, "Well, no, it seems like it indicates that it's heliocentric. Our solar system, at least, is heliocentric, where we're
Going around the sun.
rotating around the Earth or the sun, right?" And so then Galileo comes along, and he basically says the same thing. And at first, there's a guy named Bellarmine who was a bishop, and he's like, "Well, okay, wait a minute. There's the Book of God's Law and the Book of God's Works, and maybe we're misunderstanding, that scripture about, or maybe we're feeling like there's scriptural reasons why the Earth is the center, but yet it's not real specific there, and maybe it's not." And so then they go, "Well, we can adjust our thinking. It's not in contradiction to scripture. We
Right.
can adjust our thinking. It doesn't change anything." Like someone said, which I really like. It's like they say there was two positions. Actually, there was a third position, and one was, like we said, the geocentric or the heliocentric.
Right.
And what about the theocentric?
But
God is. God theocentric. God is. He's the center. Who cares about the earth and the sun? That's kind of a neat approach
is
on
that a
it.
third view, or is that like not even talking about the same thing? Because clearly, when it comes to planets orbiting things, that's not referring to the fact that God
No,
is.
it's not it's not a third view like opined by Copernicus or Galileo or Galileo's humpbacked assistant Archibald. Um,
I don't remember reading about that.
I'm just going with that. Yeah, it's secret information. Um, but no, they didn't mention that. It was just somebody saying, okay, fine. I just think whether it's heliocentric or geocentric, I don't care, because for me, I'm thinking theocentric. God is the center of all things.
Right.
He's so what does it matter? Now the scientists, that should not satisfy the scientists, Christian or non-Christian, completely. They should go like, okay, that's fine, that's cool, we agree with that. But we should be able to tell whether
Right. I mean, it would be interesting to know at least.
right.
And how the planets work and orbit. So, are you paralleling that with the evolutionist account of saying that it's not specific, or are you saying that it's different?
As far as in the age of the Earth, you mean?
Yeah.
And when you mean evolution account that,
Okay. Yeah, I guess
yeah. What do you mean?
I guess you
What do you
don't have
mean?
to believe in evolution if you believe that the Earth is old. Okay, just old Earth.
Mm. Yeah, I tend to believe that the Earth is probably younger than people think. I tend to think of a young Earth,
Yeah.
and
Right. I
so
was just asking if you were paralleling um the geocentric versus heliocentric to the same kind of situation when it comes to the old Earth.
I'm glad you weren't trying to. I'm glad you weren't asking me to find a parallel between my fish story, because I was gonna go like, well, uh, I have no idea, but
Yeah, I have no idea either. I was just asking about that.
so, but no, I tend to be the young Earth person, and let me just give you some of the reasons
No, no,
why.
hold on.
Okay,
I
go
I was
ahead.
just asking if you were paralleling that to
The
the
fish.
the universe orbiting thing. Were you trying to
Yeah.
parallel that to that?
Well, the young Earth. old Earth, and the parallel weather, the sun. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, yeah, so then you could go young Earth, old Earth, God. I'm just going with God. I don't know which it is, old Earth or young Earth. I'm just going with God. It's His world.
Right.
Young world, old world, God's world. I'm going with God's world.
Yeah. Well, so do you think that it matters? So why do you take the young Earth view?
Okay, that's an interesting question. I don't think the story in the garden and all the history that we see in the Old Testament from that point on, I don't believe that's symbolic. I believe it's actual history.
Okay.
Okay, so if we try to count back and using all the years, and it's difficult, was the year that Abraham used the same as the year that we use today? Or not Abraham? Yeah, Abraham, or Noah, or
Hmm.
or Seth and Cain and all their descendants, and I don't know, but I believe that is historical, and so if I believe that's historical, which um, that Jesus kind of doesn't give us an option on that when he says that if you don't believe Moses and what he wrote, then you're not going to believe what I say. And so, uh,
Well, the question I
and
have is,
go
did
ahead.
Moses ever write like that in any other part of his writings, where you could be like, that's not literal? Is there any example other than the creationist account that we could take not non literally?
Well, that is a great point
So
because it did
I
not.
can't think of any.
I can't either. I can't think of any. Um, so that is an excellent point, Jay. It's one I haven't thought about. But yeah, so that would be another reason to take it as literal, and and so that's one of the reasons why. That's one of the scriptural reasons why I believe
Hmm.
it's a young Earth, and then one of this is very simple. This is very simple. It's basically logic and philosophical. It's so if I believe that God created Adam, and it's understood that Adam was probably as a man, as far as age, when he was created. There's the church fathers or early theologians opine that he was probably 30 years of age because
Okay.
that's considered to be like the perfect age because that's the age that we look at Christ beginning his ministry, and so that's like the fullness of age. So Adam was made 1 minute ago, and then a doctor in chemistry, Professor Atkins, was translated back into time by the Lord and said, "Hey, here's this guy named Adam. How old do you think he is?" And then, Professor Atkins or Professor whoever does their tests on Adam to see, well, how old he is. They may not even do chemical tests. They may just ask him questions and say, well, he seems like, look at his size, look at his beard. Um, if Adam had a beard, it's kind of weird. Don't be scared. I'm just saying that we always
What?
picture Adam. We always picture Adam in the garden without a beard. But have you ever seen a picture of Adam with a
No,
beard?
no.
Now, I haven't seen Adam or pictures of Adam displayed with a beard, but I have seen Eve with like facial hair.
I doubt
Anyway,
that. No.
it's just a woman problem. But anyway, no, but so if that person were to inspect Adam and go, well, how old do you think he is, Dr. Atkins? Well, he's about 30 years of age. Wrong again. He's like 3 minutes old. He's like, what? So if God created Adam in his fullness, in time, we would say he's a minute old. But in maturity, we'd say he's 30. So to me, it would be like, could God create a world that, boom, he creates a world with rocks, trees, rivers, oceans, and someone were to go and carbon date that and go like, wow, this is like really old,
Mm.
really, really old. And so that's another reason why I tend to think it's not a big deal. We're talking God here.
Right.
We're talking God created everything from nothing.
And I think a good example of what you're referring to is we can look at, I believe it was when the volcano St. Helens, I don't remember. But if I remember correctly, there was a bunch of layers of, similar to what we see in, when you dig down, there's layers of dirt and stuff like that. But in this instance, it was like cooled off, and it looked like it could be incredibly old. Rock formation of just different layers of different age materials. And so, God could make those layers when he made the planet. Meaning,
Mm-hmm.
you would have to. He could make similar geological structures right when he made the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
think that it really is interesting talking about what would the flood do if when that happened, that it would erode a bunch of things. It would like change the earth and make it look older, even
Mm-hmm.
if it wasn't. And I think that's just another thing that indicates to me like, man, imagine how much strain the earth had on it when the waters covered everything. There's stuff going everywhere in the water. I heard that argument about the catastrophist view, which is basically the earth does look old, but we don't have to chalk that up to age.
You know what's interesting, and I don't ever want to forget that term because I'm going to use it somewhere. I've never heard the term catastrophist, but it makes. I mean, when you say it, I know exactly what you mean and who you're talking about. But I've never described myself to anybody when they ask me. So, what are you? I'm gonna. So next time I'm asked that, I'm a catastrophist.
Yeah, people don't typically use that word.
No, but it makes sense. So,
Right, it makes it sound like I'm like like a super pessimist.
well, yeah, that's what they'd probably answer if you said, "Well, I'm a catastrophist." They might say, "Oh, I'm a pessimist." Okay, yeah, that's not what I'm talking about. But I
No,
would
they
be
would say
just
that
using
they're
it as,
yeah.
yeah. So, but I digress. That's one of my modes. Digress. I have first through fifth gears, and I have a D gear. Digress. Anyway, so
Oh, okay.
okay, we won't digress any farther. So, okay, so you're so I tend to okay, so going back, thinking about that example of Adam.
Hmm.
Also, think of someone God if he made a house. He could do that. He could say, "Okay, I'm going to make a house for my neighbor Steve, or for George's neighbor Steve." I don't have a neighbor Steve, so maybe he has to create Steve first. But anyway, he's going to make a house for my neighbor Steve, and boom, he makes a house. Someone sees it and goes like, "Wow!" And then they start digging into the house and realize, well, there's timber here, there's wood. There had to be trees that were at least 40 years old. But you just made this house. How is
Right,
that possible? Now, thinking that way, uh, there's an error in logic if I'm going to apply it to the beginning because God didn't start out with a pre material. He
right,
didn't go to the Galactic Home Depot or in our area, the Galactic Menards, and purchase materials to create his world, but he created it out of nothing. So, um, so we know that okay, so God exists out of time, but when he creates something physical, right? Is that is it the first physical thing material? It shows we believe anyway that the first thing that God created was the angels, but we don't have that spelled out specifically. But if we don't include that, the first thing that He makes materially in the physical world is that when the clock started, when time began. Is there any requirement that you can think of scientifically that makes that necessary?
The time would start.
Yeah.
So I don't know about scientifically. I think philosophically. What?
Well, go
Because
ahead.
anything with material has the ability to break apart and be put into different uh parts, or it can be parts of it can be removed. It can decay. So I think it would necessarily start time when God did that, because time is a material thing. It's a thing that material is affected by. And so, I mean, it's possible maybe God's like, there's not time, but I think right when you create something that's not you, you create time.
Well, and the reason I ask that is because I think someone could philosophically suggest, since we're talking an all-powerful God who created all things out of nothing, so could He not create the physical world and not have any form of decay or any change necessarily, other than He made this world, and try to picture in your mind trees, grass, and where there's no wind blowing them yet. There's
Right.
no they're just still, because He's creating them. And once He's done with creation, He goes,
Right. Well, that's
and the clock
conceivable.
starts.
That's
Hmm.
conceivable when we're considering this, but I think that it's necessary that something with potential is also bound by something. And it seems like any ability for it to change means that it's in time. But I don't know. I don't know. I
Well,
have to
that's what
think
I
about
mean.
that
Where it couldn't
longer.
change.
What?
That's where I mean. That's what I mean, that it couldn't change.
Well,
So,
anything other than God can change.
what I mean is, like, for example, if He made this cup and He made it stationary and in place, not moving, not decaying, not even with the capability of it decaying yet, because He hasn't started the clock. Everything's assembled,
Let
and
me
then He
put it a
starts the
better way.
clock. And okay,
Okay. God makes something, and that changes the world. What I mean by that is, He's not changing, but the
right,
world that He's making is changing. So,
right. It is.
right?
It's adding stuff to it.
Right.
So on the
So,
first day He did this. On the second day He did this.
right, which would happen in time, which means that the minute that I create something, it is, I think, bound by time in some manner.
Mm-hmm.
Just because that's when it came into existence at some point,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Well, and yeah. So I just threw that out there,
Right? Yeah,
but
that's a
and
good.
you're
That's an interesting thing to think about, though.
well, and then the other thing is that He does say He does designate the first, second, and third day. Then the next thing, the next idea would be, well, maybe time speeds up or slows down, um, where it's going really
Yeah, I've heard that
fast,
possibility. Yeah.
right? And my first inkling is that time seems like it would be constant.
Mm.
But what would my reasoning be for that, scientifically or logically? There's nothing bound. I'm not bound to a. If we are in time, if we are in time, whether this hour that we're talking on this podcast to us is an hour,
Yeah.
but God just like stretched out the time, it still feels like an hour to us. But in comparison to that same thing a week ago, it's actually a lot shorter. It was done in a minute, or it was done in over 2 years. We wouldn't be able to see it because we're inside the thing. We are part of creation.
Well, hold on. If um, couldn't it be possible that certain properties were sped up, like the how fast something changes, how fast something moves? We could still be living during that day, and we could still be carrying out our normal activities, but other things move faster. Not everything.
Yeah, and to me that I would go like, okay, I understand what you're saying, but it would seem like in that situation, I would say that everything that is would be operated on the same time clock. Now, not to get in the weeds on this
Everything.
too much.
Well, I'm saying
Huh?
that not everything is what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, like if there's a forest with a lion, a tiger, and a mongoose and a elephant, that you're saying for the elephant time is going this speed, for the mongoose it's going this
Not
speed.
exactly.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying
So
that certain properties would be sped up and certain properties wouldn't be. Or
okay.
let's think in this idea, like God creates uh, plants that grow super fast.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that they just are given that capacity right now,
Mm-hmm.
and we can see them grow super fast, but we're not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily changing at the same time. I think that this is all unnecessary and going down things that it's like these are all just
Yeah.
hypotheticals that are just pointless. I think, but
You come back to the theocentric or the God world. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of things that could be and that we couldn't see.
yeah, well, we
We
could always
know,
make anything more complicated than it is.
right? And obviously we have to accept there's some things we don't know. We mentioned one of our podcasts
Right.
that science uses the speed of light in computations and different things within physics, and they assume, they can't prove that light travels in one direction in a straight line from point A to point B at a constant speed of 186,000 miles per second. And so, but they can't prove that.
Right. Well,
So
so far it's been convenient to use that because
yeah,
it's helped with certain innovations and thoughts that it seems to work that way. But yeah, I see what you mean.
yeah. And so from God's point of view, if God could take Einstein and say, "Hey, come here, little fella, sit right here on my shoulder. Let me show you a little thing about light," and all of a sudden, let's say Einstein could see that light travels in all directions at varying speeds. He couldn't see it from his viewpoint because he's in the world that he's trying to view. Now we know that the world is intelligible and shows order, and we have to presuppose that. Any scientist presupposes that already, that there is an order
Right.
in everything in the world. Otherwise, we couldn't understand it.
Right. Well, a good point is that their equations don't change all the time. They're typical equations that stay the same. And so far it doesn't seem like they change at all. Meaning their calculations are always the same if you put in the same numbers, which I think is
Mm-hmm.
like, why is that? It's like in the world of the chaotic universe and of not being created by a designer. It's like why does anything stay the same?
Mm-hmm.
It's like it just doesn't seem to make much sense. And
Mm-hmm.
so we have to assume that there's some order in the universe. I don't know if there's any equation that changes. I don't know if there's any that they
Right.
found to change, which is really interesting to me.
Right. That should indicate something.
Right, there's not one that I know of that it
No,
just
there's none.
changes.
There is none. I mean, even the law of entropy, we can observe. Isn't that from things in motion coming to rest? Right? Is that what that
I don't remember
launch?
exactly,
For
but
sure.
that's
That okay. So
don't know.
Right. So we can look at the fact that my neighbor's cat is running and then comes at rest in the middle of the road permanently doesn't mean the rest of the world all of a sudden stopped.
Right.
That cat met entropy, or what's the other word when it reaches stasis? When it reaches equilibrium, it's neither going forward or backward.
Mm.
But or decay. But everything else is still going. To us, it might seem like uh, when we think of the law of entropy, I guess it would be thermodynamics, or pretty sure I'm thinking right. The entropy.
I
But
thought entropy was about decay, but I'm not entirely sure.
it is, and I'm using it in the case that it decays to a point of maybe
Stopping.
being
Okay,
gone,
yeah.
or but coming to rest. But anyway, now that we're in the weeds, but we are speculative doctors.
Well, I just was thinking about you're talking about constants, things that stay the same. That's a good
Oh,
point when we're referring to creation. Is why would a time all of a sudden be different at the beginning than at the end when there's no instance that we can see in our
right.
time that has ever changed? And they'd be
Mm-hmm.
like, well, it hasn't changed in a million years, maybe. It's like, dude, wouldn't it change? I don't know. It just seems so absurd because if the laws that we see them as we see them today stopped working the way that they would, the universe would collapse. So it seems like weird
Yep.
that. So you're telling me that the circumstances were different over a million years ago, and that the order still exists today, even though the laws
Mm-hmm.
have completely changed. That doesn't really
Mm-hmm.
make much sense.
Right.
I'm not, I don't have that
And it,
fully thought out in
no,
my
and it
head.
no, and it wouldn't bring much peace because there'd be no stability. Think about a relationship. Think about, okay, so let's take husband and wife. If the husband and wife are committed, and they have each of them know that they can depend on each other to operate in a certain way,
Right.
right? And the more they have more fidelity um, to that mode of operation, or that virtuous action within that relationship, the more stable and the more enduring and more happy that relationship is, because it has laws that are always so.
Right. Right.
My
Yeah.
husband is always patient with me, or my wife is always patient with me, and all the other different things. And so in life, in relationships, the more constant to a seemingly law, or unchangeable law each party in that relationship are, husband and wife, the more alive it is, because it's so stable that they have confidence. So
Right.
so
Well, I mean that's how we live our lives. Is the things that are stable are the things that we that give us peace, and the things that are chaotic are chaotic just by nature. But
mhm,
it's it's way more comforting to know that the thing doesn't change. The universe
mhm,
doesn't change when it comes to how things operate, and it shows the goodness of our creator. And it
mhm,
also just shows that it would be really chaotic and a mess if they just
mhm,
changed randomly. I mean, there's so many laws that just keep our universe together
mhm,
that it just would be insane
mhm.
how the universe would work. And I think it just shows that there's a creator. And I think that I don't know.
Well,
I it's
let me
orderly.
ask you this question. It's a trick question
You have a lot of those.
with no right answer. That was a trick in itself. When someone says I've got a trick question and there's no wrong answer, I'm going to start saying, "Hey, I got a trick question for you and there's no right answer." If the person's really paying attention to me, they're going to go like, "Well, then don't ask me, because I don't want to give the wrong answer." Well, who knows if you're going to give a wrong answer? You just said there's no right answer. So any answer I give is going to be wrong. Yeah, just a way of me maintaining control. But anyway, okay. So who do you think the first debate about young Earth or old Earth? Who do you think the names of the two individuals that had that debate first
The one that you were. Oh, you mean in
in
past
history? In history, who do you think of the name of the people that had that first debate?
about old creation and new creation?
Yeah, whether it's an old creation or a new creation.
I don't know.
Adam and Eve. So Adam and Eve, what day were men and women created?
I don't remember.
I think it's the third day,
Okay.
third or fourth day. So, and we don't see anywhere in Scripture where God informed them of all of what transpired before they came.
Hmm.
So here's Adam and Eve sitting in a luscious garden, sipping on beautiful nectar with carousel or little umbrellas in their drinks, singing, and she's like, Adam, how long do you think this garden has been here? How much work has God put into this thing? And look at how beautiful it is. And Adam's like, being the man, he's always right. Um, he's like, well, dear, I'm going to try to put it in simple terms for you. I don't know. No, or he might say, it's been here a long time. And then Eve would go, well, I don't know. How old are we? Because even Adam, first of all, Adam did not see himself created. Uh, he didn't see himself born. Adam didn't see Eve born. In fact, God put him to sleep. And then all of a sudden, now Adam did know when he saw Eve, after God took the rib or the side of Adam and formed Eve, fashioned Eve, he did immediately intellectually know that she came from him,
Hmm.
because he said, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. He knew intellectually, because he operated in basically in grace and in an original justice. His mind was so expansive and not in disorder with his passions, so that he could think so clearly. That's why when the scriptures say that he came and he named all the animals, there's an indication that he didn't only name them just haphazardly. He say, oh, that's Bert, Steve, Jim, Sally, Bartholomew, Levi. I'm just using people names for animal names. No, there's an indication that when he named them, he kind of took into his mind what they were and gave them a fitting name.
Right. Well,
Okay?
I think that when we're talking about him knowing that that was bone of his bone and flesh of his flesh is possible because he probably could tell that he was missing a rib if that's what was taken
Maybe.
out of him. And then
Yeah,
the other
maybe.
thing is naming the animals. It's like he's the first, like Aristotle. Like animals have certain functions, and
Right.
they function well as this or that. And so he's like, what makes a lion a lion? What
Right.
what does what makes a good lion? He's the first philosopher thinking about that, and then he names them based on that. I just thought,
Yeah. Well, and that's true, because philosophy didn't all of a sudden occur in the year, 700 BC or
yeah,
whatever. It always existed. It's just man discovered it. That they could analyze um and organize reality into coherent, logical
yeah. Man has always been
assemblies.
rational.
Right. So, but coming back to Adam and Eve, even in Adam and Eve, now they could ask God, and we don't know all the discussions. We don't know what they knew or didn't know.
Right.
You know, um,
Do we even know how
it's
long they lived in the garden?
well, yeah, less than okay, Satan fell, as far as we know, Satan fell almost instantaneously. And I used to always think, okay, Satan fell kind of instantaneously, and the angels, after creation,
Mhm.
they were given a choice, and they, for whatever reason, and I always thought, the angels fell instantaneously. It took man a long time, and then I started thinking, wait a minute, the whole weekend ended, and he already sinned. It seems because or did it happen after? I guess it happened after the first Sabbath. We don't, like you said, we don't necessarily know, but regardless, it happened pretty darn quickly. As far as in comparison to Adam and Eve's age, because it happened before Cain and Abel were born.
Right, but I mean, they could have been like they could have lived there for like 1,000 years and not have changed their age ever, or not
Yeah,
have had any children.
that's possible.
But
So
I
we'd
mean,
have to
that's not
look.
likely. But I don't know.
I'd want to look back at the scriptures in Genesis there where it goes it. But anyway, my point being that even Adam and Eve, it would seem like they probably didn't understand the beginning, because Adam and Eve, it doesn't seem were aware that there was another rational being in existence that could be dangerous to them, namely an angel, namely Satan, who could appear into as a snake. So we don't know what they know that knew or didn't know about what came before them. We don't know if uh, uh, our blessed Lord and God, being a doting father, we don't know if he was like taking video of Adam sleeping as he took the rib out, so that for posterity they could play the DVD back. And this is when you were born, Eve, and it's like so we don't know what Eve and Adam knew about what came before them, or how they came into being, or um uh we don't know. Um so I just as I was thinking that Adam and Eve are probably the first ones where to go like, well, do you think it's a young Earth or an older? And maybe Adam or Eve would have, depend upon who asked the question, go like, dude or miss. If it was, I am theocentric, I don't care. No, uh, no, they probably would have gone like, I don't know.
Right. I just had a thought, and this doesn't really apply. But if Adam
Good.
named all the animals, then wouldn't he have known that the devil wasn't one of the animals that he named? And then you'd be like, well, why he's appearing as something that I didn't name, or something. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I would say no in this regard, because remember it says it's not really clear, but says he appeared as a serpent, but there's no indication that any of the animals spoke.
Right, right. I know, but I'm saying like, why would? Oh well, Adam wasn't there, or was he there
What?
when the serpent was there?
Well, the scripture's not clear, although it seems that Adam is fairly close by.
Right. The only reason why I say that though is thinking about, well, he wouldn't he know that there was something wrong here going on?
Well, and wouldn't Eve know? I mean, she's observed lions. She's never had a discussion with them going like, hey, what do you guys like to do during the day?
Hmm.
Eat stuff. Uh, you know, um, that should have, there's a lot of warnings that we could say Eve had, and Adam too, regarding the snake.
Mm.
It's because, like, wait a minute, like in Narnia, when Susan says, it's a beaver, it shouldn't be talking, like, so that should have been like the first thing, like the serpent comes up, hey, Eve, let me tell you about this fruit. And the first thing would be like, oh, I like fruit. What do you want to talk about? No, the first thing would be, whoa, what do you mean? How can you talk?
Right.
That
Yeah.
seems like that would be the first conversation. Okay, like you said, we digress.
I
Um,
didn't say
we
that.
got Dr.
You just
Digress.
put words
That'd be
in.
an that'd be an yeah, that'd be a neat podcast name, Dr. Digress. And every time you go on, you go like, okay, today's subject is going to be mathematics, but you go off into like
Random things.
ballet or football or whatever. Nothing about the subject
Oh,
that you.
dude, that's fun.
That's actually a really great idea.
Yeah, we gotta
Maybe
actually do these skits sometimes.
why don't we have an episode? And please, somebody out there, okay, if you steal our idea, fine. But why don't we have an episode called episode 29? Dr.
Uh,
Digress. Dr. Digress. But anyway, so coming back to the young Earth, old Earth thing,
thing.
uh, there's I tend to be young Earth in this regard because of Adam and Eve, because we can trace back, from Noah to
Oh,
Adam,
right, yeah, yeah.
from Noah. So we trace back. So in that parameter, that causes me to be young Earth generally. Okay. So then if somebody from the scientific world, Christian or non-Christian, says, well, it seems like the world is 8 billion years old. And here's why. Does that scare me that they give possible logical
Right.
reasons why it seems like it? No. No, it doesn't. It means that, that's interesting. Um, Faith doesn't contradict reason.
Right.
And so my faith is not going to contradict reason, but maybe I'm not completely understanding what my reason is telling me in regards to the scientific data or the physical data
Mm-hmm.
that I am observing or someone's presenting to me. So for example, if time is, the funny thing about scientists, because they tend to generally be evolutionists, non-Christian ones anyway, evolutionists, the thing that they really want is a lot of time. Because, okay, so how did
What?
those molecules combine and go from like a single cell organism to a dog, a cat, my neighbor Steve, my dad and mom? How did that happen? Well, there was a lot of time. So chance, over and over again, chance kept winning every once in a while, every couple billion years, or every 100 million years, chance worked. So they always need a lot of time. But anyway, so if they present something that seems odd, I can go like, well, yeah, that's interesting. But I realize that we as humans have a very short window of if this is where I exist, if this pencil represents where I exist right now, at this point in time, and going from this way is going to the past, going this way is going to the future. The future's we can anticipate things, but it's really unknown, right? We
Right.
we can't. But going back this way, we are really limited on knowing what we can know past a certain point. So much so that if someone is trying to solve a burglary that happened yesterday, they have trouble proving exactly how and who that person was that did it. And that just happened yesterday. And that was a very simple thing. So if we're talking creation or change or time, that's a very complicated thing. And that goes back a long ways. So as we go farther and farther back, it gets more shadowy and shadowy. We may think we see, for example, in the closet, we may think we see the shirt we want to wear, but the light's out in the bedroom, and we reach for it and we grab it. This is not the shirt I wanted. We put it back in. So sometimes when we look back in the past, we think we see clear, but we're not really seeing as clear as we think. That's really clear, isn't it?
Yeah, I heard it loud and clear.
The other difficulty is, and I think this is and tell me what you think about this. So if we're in a closed system of creation, if I'm a part of that creation, I can understand things because of order, but I'm kind of included in that creation. So I don't have the perspective of looking from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
That has got to create holes in our understanding, don't
Oh
you
yeah,
think?
absolutely. And this I would parallel this to similar to imagine being a 3D creature going into a four-dimensional space. It's like there's so much unknown. You can't
I've
you
done it before. I've done it before.
there's so much unknown because you don't know the extra spatial dimension. But let's say that you're a four-dimensional being going into a three-dimensional space, if that exists, whatever that means. Based on people's understanding, you would be able to see everything about an object. You'd be able to see the backside. You'd be able to see a bunch of things that you wouldn't be able to if you were part of that 3D world. And so it's like, because of our perspective, there's so much we can't see, which is
Mm-hmm.
beyond us, and then it limits what we can see as well. But
Mm-hmm.
somebody that's outside of it, like God, he can see everything. He can see
Mm-hmm.
all of it, and it's like, how can we even conceive of that? And so, yeah, I mean, being part of the closed system definitely makes it a lot harder to see everything.
And so, if we were part of the closed system, and there was something outside of that closed system, which would be God,
Yeah.
not in creation, and He has condescended and come down to us to tell us things. He didn't tell us everything,
Right.
right? We know a lot about God, and we have, a book that we can read in a week or less that covers before time, during time, and after time. And we think we have a lot of information, but in reality, when you really think about everything, we have very little information. And it could also boil down to two words: follow me. So his message, his whole book is follow me.
Mm.
And all of us want to say, yeah, but what about this? What about that? What about this? He's like, follow me. Yeah, but is it a young earth? Is it an old earth? Am I descended from orangutans? We have logical reasons and scientific reasons why that's not so. But his answer would be, follow me, you know? And so, thinking about the young earth and old earth thing, it would be good as Christians for us to relax. And our confidence first is in Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Lean not on your own understanding. Yeah, but is it an old earth or young earth? Lean not on, on your own understanding. Follow me. And so as Christians, we could go like, okay, so then we could debate whether it's young earth or old earth and not lose our foundation of faith.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I always point to is, okay. Let me say, like, if evolution is true, it doesn't change anything about God.
Right.
And for
Right.
me, it's like,
Right.
okay, why would the atheist go to evolution? I don't know why, because it doesn't change anything. Um, but that's my thought. These arguments about the age of the Earth, they don't change anything for me.
Mm-hmm.
That what they change is, like, obviously our understanding of creation, but it doesn't change my understanding of God.
Mm-mm.
God is the same yesterday, today, and forever.
Yeah.
Um,
If the earth is a billion years, God is still really cool. If
yeah,
the earth is 10,000 years old, God is still really cool. What has changed?
right. Well, I just like, you
I
know,
do look at, let me interrupt real quick. I don't look at young earth and old earth in the same way I look at evolution and creation, though. But anyway, go ahead. Keep
yeah,
going.
but none of this changes anything.
Mm-hmm.
Because God still needs to be there in order for anything to exist. And I think that,
Mm-hmm.
no matter which view we take, God is still powerful. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
God could make something out of nothing. I mean, that's more powerful than anything, and God could redeem sinners, which is like an amazing thing. God's power is not threatened by evolution or old Earth
Mm-hmm.
creationism. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't change God. What it does
Mm-hmm.
do is obviously it changes our human understanding, but it's like these things are creatures, not creator, and so
Mm-hmm.
God is not threatened by these, and we should not be threatened.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes it can be a distraction. I mean, sure, if your field of science is understanding the age of the Earth and stuff like that, go ahead, go and debate. I'm fine with that. But
Mm-hmm.
the typical Christian, we should focus on other things that are real that do change our understanding of God, or does matter what our understanding
Mm-hmm.
of God is, instead of these things that only affect us at the human level, really. And so that's the
Because it
thing.
may it may change how we live or what we do or our actions we take or not take.
Right, absolutely. That's what is important. And so, like I said, it doesn't mean that we can't focus on creationism at all or whatever. I mean, it's an interesting topic to some people, but it's like,
Mm-hmm.
what is most important to us?
Mm-hmm.
That's really what I have to ask people is, what is most important to you? Is it that your human understanding is more correct than another person's human perspective, or are you going to look at the world and try and find the divine perspective?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, so there's a couple things coming to my mind. That there's I'm trying to remember where in the if it's in the deuterocanonical book Wisdom or Sirach, but in there it says that, "O mortal," I'll paraphrase, "O mortal, more has been shown to you in the one thing I gave you than you can even understand. Focus on that, what you can understand, and don't stress about the rest." Okay, that's definitely a paraphrase. I don't think I see anywhere in the scripture it says don't stress. Okay, but in scriptures we see a lot of examples of where Christ doesn't give all the answers. He gives the direction of follow me, basically.
Right.
And we can see that in the Old Testament. But then also I think what I'm trying to say is like that I think is so well shown in The Chosen in one of the episodes, and it's not we don't see this scenario in script, this specific scenario in scripture, because it's not a show. It's a show based on biblical um, on the Bible, but it's not just a show on the Bible. There's leeway. Anyway, there's this situation where um, Jesus has been preaching to the 5,000, and the disciples are noticing that the people are really hungry and haven't had food or whatever, and so John and Peter are standing off as they're where they are during this time of the 5,000 being taught before they're fed, and John is kind of like stressed out a little bit. He's like, "Peter, these people are hungry. What are we going to do? What is he going to what's going to happen? We got." He's like, John, if he wants to feed them, he'll feed them." Yeah, but John, if he wants to feed them, he'll feed them. So basically he's saying, relax, John. Relax, John. God's got it. You know, relax. And he's not going to give you, I don't have the answers. Just like you, John. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that he can feed them if he wants to. And so, uh, like you were saying, we can approach a lot of these things once we shut down and we start trying to maintain protection of the gospel, like young earth or old earth. our guard goes up, and then it shuts down our ability to receive an argument that someone might be giving us, because we're just interested in protecting the fact that it's definitely an old Earth. I'm not even going to listen to it. Just, rather than just relax and go like, okay, God is God. He's in control. It seems like it's a young Earth to me, or if I'm the other side, it seems like it's an old Earth to me. I'll eventually know,
Yeah.
but is it something that I should focus on? Should it separate brethren? You
Probably
know,
not.
probably not.
Just so you
What
know, we're
church
at
do
an
you
hour
go
and
to?
10 minutes.
Oh, we're probably done. I go to the Church of the Old Earth. You what? I go to the Church of the Old Earth.
Yeah, well, if you're
Hmm.
going there, that sounds like a cult. But,
Yeah, but the other guy goes, well, what church do you go to? I go to the Church of the New Earth. Everything's new. Really? Yeah, every week we got a new pastor. We never
oh,
seen him before.
that's more scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything's new and not everything. Yeah.
Right. So, I just was interested. I was just thinking about the old Earth and New Earth, and
I could not tell that that's what you were thinking about.
yeah. And then looking at the fact that, okay, could we really argue? We may have an opinion about what translation we like better than another, and or what translation we feel of the Bible is more accurate to the original languages, or consistent. But an absolute argument, of fighting about it, I'm not so sure. You know, um, but all right. Well, that's all I had. Other than I hope that you all out there, we appreciate your time. And if you're able to somehow work together, work in that thing that I talked about, the fish and the money in the mouth earlier in the show, if somehow that works into this show and you're able to apply it, please leave a comment of how you did that, because I have no idea how it applied actually. So
Yeah, and if you can write a
anyway,
comment about whatever you just said, that would be helpful because I need some clarification.
okay, I won't try to clarify it. So no, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you. And Pinchy, thank you.
Thank you for listening to my uh, words.
Your elucidations.
My thoughts. Thank you for listening to my thoughts.
Yeah, I don't hear your thoughts, so I listen to your voice. But I tried listening to your thoughts one time.
My mind went
I
blank.
and I went scared. Yeah, my mind went blank. Okay,
All
all
right.
right. Well, anyway, thank you all, and Godspeed.
Have a good week.